Awesome. I think now we'll be starting our panel with all of our speakers. So you've just seen a range of presentations from all of our speakers. And I think what was really interesting was we covered a massive range between all of our different talks. So we've seen everything from almost theory of some of it, from more from Maisara and from myself. We then had Mohammed Fawzi talk us through BIM and the role that has to play and how that links in with project management. We had Andy, who focused a lot on the data components of what's in a lot of the BIM resources and various other things as well. And then we had Brent also take us through applications and how they're using data. So I think we covered a very good spectrum across all of the different talks. If I can just ask Andy and Maisara and Mohammed to join us, if Mohammed is on.
Mohammed's not on at the moment.
Okay, sure. I think so thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your presentations. What I'm going to do is something that's a bit, I'm putting everyone on the spot, so my apologies for that. And we've just all watched each other's presentations. I guess something that caught your eye from something you heard from one of the speakers. I'm just curious, what was it for each of you? Like, what was one thing that you saw or like, this is really interesting, hadn't thought of that, or hadn't thought about it in quite that way. I'm just actually quite curious, because there were quite a few ideas I had during all of this, and I'm just curious what you all thought.
Well, I'll jump. I liked the continuity. So like the common threads, even though the perspectives were quite different. API, connecting data, how to visualize it. Like we all mentioned Power BI or some form of visualizer. So what I liked is that, even though we're all from different parts of the world, we are solving the same global, or trying to solve the same global industry challenges. That's fair.
Yeah, I liked your energy, Brent.
Thank you.
So did I.
Yeah, I like your presentation a lot. I like how you took steps to convert that to practical and trying to resolve a real issue, which is amazing. I like it.
The bit I liked from Brent's was, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Was, I don't know if it fee builder, where you removed Excel, right, and then you're selecting, well, we're going to have 4 meetings a week, we're going to be doing these activities, and it builds that fee allowance, I guess. That's really nice.
Yeah, crazily, that's been 10 months in the making. So
doesn't surprise me.
I know, and my CEO says, Brent, I know you're itching to get it rolled out. Just be patient and do it right. Yeah. It's fair. Yeah.
Okay. I want to dig into some of that in a second, but I want to comment on the continuity across the regions, because I've also just seen Ralph comment. I think it's one of the special things about BIM heroes and this community more broadly. It's one of the major appeals from my perspective for this community. I'm in some very UK-centric communities because I'm here in the UK, but what I like about this community is it's just very, very international. So we have all 4 of us are now sitting in different places and in different countries, and as you just said, we're talking about the same topics. And I think there's something really, really nice about all of that, and about the shared goals and the essence. And it just shows that while construction, everyone says it's different, but it's also the same, regardless of where you are, regardless of whether you exactly want to do IFC, or you want to go into OpenBIM or 19650 or whatever it may be. The fundamentals and the principles are the same. And I think that's what that's such a good takeaway from all of these talks. I guess the just as a follow-on, Brent, to you saying 10 months, and like one of my big thoughts in your presentation was that is extremely impressive. That would have taken resource.
Right.
And resource equates to time. You just said one fee calculator is 10 months in the making. You showed a lot more than a fee calculator throughout the presentation. How do you justify the value of all of this? Like, people don't seem like to spending in construction. While you didn't pay for tandem or there's the resource and the time and the effort. Yeah, I'm just curious. How do you go about communicating the value of data and what you're doing?
Yeah, so for Turner Fleischer, we do have a collection of operational teams. So when I started, I was leading the digital practice department. So it's overhead in the traditional sense, but a lot of firms in our industry view overhead as revenue crushers. The destruction of revenue if you're paying people who don't do projects, right? We view them as foundational to empowering us to actually earn revenue and do our projects. So we have a team of, like, we're 250 people. We have 10 digital practice members. So 10 people that are, for the most part, overhead, building automations and widgets, etc. When we were growing this team, so when I started 5 years ago, I hired a software developer, someone who had zero knowledge of the AEC industry. And that was the best hire I ever did, because he would hear me and say, Brent, all your words don't make sense, so try again. And I would explain it, and then he would make something, right? So now we are 3.5 software developers. So things like, the fee calculator, it's 10 months in the making, off and on with a bunch of these. The weekly scheduler, that was just 1 month. So that was one shared Excel file that was sitting on SharePoint with 50 people feeding it. And there we just reached the breaking point. And we said, okay, software developers, pens down on everything. We got to take this and make it into an app. 4 weeks later, we rolled that one out. So it just depends on the nature. The fee calculator is so deep. The weekly scheduler, it's less deep. It still pulls all the data, but it's just, its functionality is lesser.
But is it justification like more being competitive in the market, or is it being more efficient internally?
Efficient. So it's definitely about efficiency for us to improve quality. So the more efficient we can be removing these mundane items, the more we can put towards quality of design, quality of work, and then creating market differentiation. That's our view.
And I guess Andy and Maisara, like, let's go with Andy first. I'm just curious, Brent is on the architecture side. As an architectural practice, and much more on the design side. I'm just curious, as contractors, how do you justify that? Like, how are you justifying these things internally? How do you justify the value of data, working on data, improving these processes?
I think we're quite lucky. We've got a realization from leadership that there is a drive to digitalize, become more efficient, become more productive, work smarter. And I think contractors aren't, we're not booking our time hourly. Yes, we're allocated. Those who are project based are allocated to projects, and we want to keep as many people project costed rather than sat on an overhead code. But yeah, the business recognizes that we continually need to reinvent how we do things. We shouldn't just sit still and accept this is how it's done. Innovation's also a core value in Alex. So people are given the time when they can to start to think about innovation and doing these things. So generally we're supported to do that, and of course those of us in my role and in my team, that's kind of part of the day job as well, So and often we'll do things in the background. No one knows we're doing them, and then we'll go and present and go, how about this? And try and get it to stick. So I think it's part of what we should be doing.
Awesome. I'm gonna come back to culture in a second. It's something that I wanted to actually discuss with all of you. How do you bring people on this journey with you? So I'm really really glad you brought up the innovative culture that you have as at ALEC, because I definitely think it's something that you from like our community like do particularly well. Meiser, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this? How do you justify the value of all of this?
Yeah, look, like we have different KPIs actually to measure the values across like using that data in different projects, like number of RFIs, for instance, the turnaround for HRFI, how it's closed, and the fast and speed of close is one of the other KPIs. There are too many different KPIs to measure if you are getting value from the use of data or not. The end goal is not just to use data; it's just to improve the value out of that. So we have different KPIs for different aspects, and we keep measuring that in each different project to find out if it's improving, not improved, what's wrong.
That's a really important point you've made, I think, and it is, all of these things, they should set goals, KPIs, and be able to measure and demonstrate.
Yep.
But that's the justification. And if assuming it's good, it works, it saves time, improves quality, whatever it is.
It's good as long as we can measure the performance. Even if it's not work, we have to find out why it's not working and how can we fix that as well.
I'm gonna do what Rolf said at the beginning, which is like take every opportunity to learn that I can. And I'm just curious. You said very specifically KPIs, and then you said RFIs. And I'm just curious, why did you focus on? I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious, why did you pick RFIs as a KPI? And the time to answer.
Yeah, just like
why did that come
one of the key points, like when you are in a construction site, like how many RFIs you got in the project, how fast is being responded to get the job done, and if you got a real working common data environment and everyone can respond in time manner, and the number of RFIs should be decreased a lot because people communicating much better. And the time to respond to the RFI as well should be less than the traditional way. And I'll say when you are in construction stage, that would be one of the key measurement.
Yeah. No, awesome. That's such a that's such a good example of a data set that companies have and everyone is sitting on, that highlights that there is an information management or a communication problem. And in an ideal world, we just have 0 RFIs basically, and everything would be complete. So thanks a lot for sharing that.
And let me add, Mo, that's an interesting comment you said. Like, people have information that they sit on and they don't realize that there's a disconnect. So one of my recent projects are trying to address all of the disparate trackers that exist in our studio. So I'm walking around people's desk and I'm seeing people punching in project numbers, project names, and project managers. Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm making a tracker for my team. I'm like, come on, let me just connect you to the ERP. Boom, 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 and it's there, right? So I'm basically turning over all the stones to see, because what I want to understand is what's the actual data you're trying to capture in Excel that is giving you the need to enter all those duplicate fields to what? To have a status or like what? And it usually boils down to 1 or 2 columns. And it's like, okay, where can I put this data? That's what I want to ask. But first it's discovering it. So I find the little gem of data, I remove their ridiculous repetition, and I can like connect to the ERP. And now I have a mission to do something with the missing data that belongs somewhere. So it's very intriguing.
Awesome. Andy, I'm almost sure you have because you basically like you showed a whole list of trackers, and I feel like sometimes you're sitting down and you're going, the word tracker comes up and you go
So
Yeah, I'm just curious what you
there's
think
so
of that.
many though, isn't there? And like the more you go out on the projects or you know, around different teams, sprints, the more you see. Oh, there's an Excel there. What are they doing with that? Oh, hold on. And yeah, it's everywhere. So and sometimes it's appropriate and the right thing to do. And a lot of the time it isn't. And it's just identifying those and then slowly trying to move it into something a bit more connected.
100%. Just want to check, is Muhammad Fawzi with us today, right now?
Yes.
I think he's up.
Yeah,
Awesome.
hi. Sorry, I believe I joined a little bit
No
late.
No worries at all.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining
Sorry
us.
for not turning the camera, but I'm driving right now, so no need to see me driving.
No worries. I think the main question that I just asked everyone is, how do you justify the benefits internally within the business? Like how, because you're more on the design side and then the consulting side. How do you justify the value of BIM and of data and digital to the wider business?
Yeah. Again, as I used to normally say, the main value of BIM from my point of view is to make the site people life is easier. So you have to make them more happy while construction. They don't have to found a lot of design disasters or a lot of uncoordinated drawings that they have to try to figure out a solution on the site. They have to find a corrected drawing that they should construct. So mainly from my point of view, using BIM starting from the design or any stage is related to a good construction or a well construction from the first time. For sure, you know all that there are a lot of BIM benefits for the operation and so on. But from my point of view, as I faced, this is one of the main advantages for using BIM in the construction field.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well put. Like, and I think it summarizes in like very human language, to be honest, what this is all about. I mean, let's just make the people's life easy. And in many ways, I say we exist. I think of myself like as a person who exists at the service of the people who are then doing the construction. And in an ideal world, all of admin costs and all of these things go to zero, and that becomes as efficient as possible. And then the site people and the design people can actually focus on the work, and they can do that as efficiently as possible without having to do all of the site admin. And I think if we do all of that, their lives is easier, but we'd save so much in the industry. It's almost, I think, impossible to quantify personally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you all think about culture? One particular. Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, what are your thoughts on culture? I'll see who wants to jump in. I have a specific one to Andy in a second, but I want to just see what are your thoughts on culture. How do you bring people on this journey with you? Maybe let's start with Maysara.
Yeah, I'll say like by realizing value. So once the people realize the value of what you're trying to achieve, they just join you. What we're doing here, we're trying to get everyone working with a BIM model. So not everyone manages the BIM model, but everyone working in our team working with a BIM model, so they can really get the value from what we have in our common data environment. How can they create issue? How can they communicate between themselves within the model directly? And everyone start to realize and find out how it's helpful, so they don't really have to guess or to use their imaginary anymore. So they can just go to the model and find out how it looks like and how it could be coordinated or resolved. And it was one of the very interesting observation we had in the last few years, that when it's going to culture, we found like most of the top management executives, they are supporting and they are trying to get that digital transformation done. Most of the young generation, they are willing to join and easy to learn. Most of the resistance in the culture change coming from the mid-management for some obvious reason. And that's where most of the efforts actually going to convince them and to get them on board. So identifying where the resistance might come from might be one of the first points, one of the first steps. So where it's coming from this category. So let's focus on getting them on board and convince them to realize the value.
Awesome. Brent, anything you want to add there?
You can bring a lot of vision and a lot of ideas, but from a culture perspective, when my stakeholders, I agree, are able to visualize the value, and then they become the champions. So a lot of the work that I've done, yeah, I'm in the background connecting systems and tables and finding where all the data is sourced and how they can view it, etc. But I need them as the stakeholders to say, this is our pain point, and I fully understand what you're going to give us. So if they're helping to make that solution, it's powerful, right? And just that culture of growth and betterment, let that weave through the entire system. I think that's what I've seen.
Awesome. Which brings me on, to be honest, really nicely to what I actually wanted to ask Andy about, because I think that's one of the things that you've generally stood out like to me, and that you're having challenges internally for helping people move these trackers and documents into systems and so on and so forth. How is, like, what beyond the fact that they've just built it, like what impact does the feeling of I'm building something and actually understanding how they're structuring these, like, do you feel like there's an intangible benefit there? I'm just curious, how is that impacting? How are these challenges impacting culture and the way you've been approaching it?
Well, I think I'll start with we're quite lucky. I mean, for a general contractor, main contractor, I think it's quite unusual that we've got a dedicated innovation team, and they've set up a brilliant framework where innovation's incentivized. So not only is it driven by leadership and you know the message is take part in innovate. Everyone in the company needs to innovate. So under that we'll have innovation sprints, so like challenge programs. We've defined a number of business challenges. The leadership, you know, we want the brightest minds in our organization to come together and try and solve them for us. So people are encouraged to take part in those, but actually also anyone in the company can have a bright idea, whatever you want to call it, and we've got quite a really good framework where innovation points are awarded to employees based on whether they're taking part in a challenge, helping to implement an idea, just registering an idea to improve something, whatever that might be, and then at the end of the year, if you come in a certain category in the top 10 or whatever it is, those points get turned into money. So it's driven as a core value, as a culture. It's monetized, and so you know, it just create a bit of a groundswell. But I think you were trying to get at building trackers and stuff in Mortar, and I mean, I find it cathartic, but whether others do, certainly those in my team do. It's quite satisfying, especially when you get something working. And I think, like Brent said, it's involving people to help the outcome. So it may be someone struggling in an Excel tracker who's like, "Oh, this is doing my head in. Can you help, like, do something with this?" And then involve them in defining what it looks like, build it for them, and then give it to them to carry on with. That's one of the most rewarding things I find.
That, like, the point around I'm going to call it bonuses, but like just the financial incentives being tied to innovation. I did not know that before. So I like that's really, really fascinating and super interesting. And it's a very good example of how you actually embody it, because
and probably the thing I didn't say is
but it's different incentivized.
Yeah, and we can jump. I mean, Imad, who leads innovation, he's really open to, like, if I go to and go, for example, we've got some training we're rolling out, online training around ISO, trying to do a mass upskilling. You know, one people say they want to do it, but then of course the day job gets in the way. So how can I help encourage people rather than just chasing them? Can I allocate, you know, if you complete within 2 months, then you get 20 points. If you know, and yeah, bring it. We'll assign the points. So you can almost like use that framework and that incentive for a number of things. It doesn't have to be under the pillar of innovation. It could be anything, but it just helps to motivate, I guess.
Just actually, I want to open this up. Like, any thoughts from what Andy just said? Like, I personally, this is the first time I hear about innovation being directly tied to financial incentives, and like training and upskilling being tied to financial incentives. Curious if you're, if you have anything like that, or if you've seen that.
I think that's a great concept. The financial incentives always speak, and you know, for me, incentives and consequences are something that as an industry we're a little weak on. So equally, you know, if there's some form of an incentive to propel us forward, that's one thing, or that's a big thing. But then equally, are there real consequences when we put up the barriers, right? So, you know, when we rolled out our weekly scheduler, you know, everybody was kind of on board because, hey, we had the crazy spreadsheet, etc. And there was one or two that just went in the old one, and you know, so, but no consequences, just had to get rid of it and whatever. But those are the types of things where if we're really going to press our industry forward, if we can incentivize and have true consequence and have that balance, obviously incentives are better, but I think that those together would make things interesting.
Awesome.
If I can add something for the culture, as you asked, I believe the key point here for what we are doing is to convince people that this is a collaborative work. It's not only about I'm doing only my task, or this is not my job, you know. And I'm a consultant. This will be done by the contractor, or will be done by the quantity survey people. It's have to be a collaborative between all of the parties, all of us. So this is how it will let this job be successful. Not only to do your work. It's about to do what will let this project succeed, even if it will not help you directly, if it will not support something in the current stage, and it will help in the future stages. It have to be considered, not only to do the current responsibilities. This is how we change the culture in order to make sure that our BIM process is work efficiently.
Yeah, I find that like that's really interesting. Or like, I think the in a way what would be fantastic is, yeah, they try to do it, but then in some ways, in an ideal world, I'm making a decision or I'm doing something. Someone almost, you almost get a FYI, if you were to do this, that this would have good consequences on the project, and that would save you time, because sometimes also people don't know. But I love this ethos of, we shouldn't just focus on what's good for us specifically. It may not save me time, but it will save everyone else time, and then as a result, the project will be better off for it. So I think that's really, really cool. There is a debate that happened on chat, and I didn't comment at the time, specifically because I wanted to ask it in the panel, to be honest. Single source of truth, single sources of truth. What do we think? I'm gonna
jump on that. So every piece of data must have a single source of truth. And that's how I convey it inside. So in my past, single source of truth. Everything gets jammed into Revit, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I had to no, you're not going to put your entire business into this Revit model, right? So there was this huge misconception in 2005 to 2010, maybe even to 2015.
Even till now.
You know, no, come on, we got to be beyond that now, right? But for me, like I take it bit by bit. So even for us, it was why I went through the whole ERP. Where is our project information? So if our project information is in Uninet, I go into Revit and I have a title block on my sheet with the project name. I'm pulling it from the ERP. I'm not typing it in. As long as we all know what the single source is for every speck of data, then you connect it, weave it, and you make it dance, and it'll be perfect. That's my view.
Awesome. I'm gonna just ask you a counter to that quickly, and then I'll ask the others.
Yeah.
I fully agree, obviously. Like I fully agree, obviously, with this idea that there isn't one source. There are many sources. It just depends on what it is, what that information is, and so on and so forth. Like Andy touched on that earlier, we facilitate, for example, data being pulled from Aconex and ACC into Morta. One of the questions I get a lot is, can we edit the data in Morta and then push it back into these systems?
Right. So and that's interesting. So what you said there, and push it back. So if you edit the data in Morta, you're not making Morta the source. You're making it an edit field to push it back to the source. So interesting thing about our ERP, the ability to push data in is not as easy as it could be. So we have an HR system where we have Bamboo HR, where we define the person. We push that data through Workato into the ERP. So the source of the person's name, address, etc., is in a special HR system, and we push the data we need into the ERP. Everything else in the ERP that we source there, we don't. So like project name, if I'm in Revit and I want to change my project name, I don't change it in Revit. I go back to the ERP, change it, and then it redistributes. Right? In theory, sure, I could rename it in Revit so long as the single source is updated.
Yeah.
Right? But that would be very complex.
See, like personally, where I go with all of this is on a technical level. I mean, as you just said, it's like depending on the system, pushing. I mean, sometimes pulling isn't even great, but pushing is there is even a higher variation. But I just think culturally, it's wrong. Personally, like I think if we get into the habit of you do the data there, mess it up, I'll bring it in, and I'll then do my thing to it, and then I'll push it back. It won't get the people who are inputting it at the source when they're inputting it to actually input better quality. Like so on that level, I've always been anti that concept. Now, someone may come and say, I want to create a placeholder in Aconex or an ACC off the back of what's in an IDP. That I'm fine with, because the source is the information delivery plan. We've just taken that data and used it somewhere else, but the source is now clear. But the moment I'm editing ACC data in another system, it's like, what is this in my head? What is the source? Is the source ACC, or is it the other place that I edited? And it just all gets very confusing.
The Revit to IFC challenge. If I take a Revit model and export it to IFC, go in the IFC file and start to edit my Revit components, and then bring it back to Revit and say, hey, it doesn't work. Well, no kidding, 100%. It doesn't work. You did what you shouldn't have done. You didn't go to the source. So 100%. For me, it's the same issue.
Awesome. Maisara, sorry, go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just going to, the example you used, I was going through it in my head when you talk, wherever the base data lives, I don't think that should ever be pushed back and updated from another system. But your example, Mo, is exactly where I was thinking it would work for, like, creating placeholders in EDMS's CDEs based on a plan that's delivered via Morta or something else. Rather, because how else would that be done? That would either be done by creating it in the CD solution itself or an Excel import. So it's, the source becomes the plan. But and you might want to add additional data to a data source, but you shouldn't. I don't think you should ever come back the other way and overwrite. You pull and connect.
100%.
Sorry.
No, that was fantastic. Meister, I'm just because that one of my questions to you, because you talked about APIs, I was gonna ask you, like from your experience and or what you've seen, how good is the software that we have within the industry when it comes to APIs? Like beyond the AC, I mean, we can have a debate over whether Autodesk's APIs are great, but apart from Autodesk as well, like just generally, what are your thoughts on APIs within the industry?
Just correction, so Autodesk APIs are based on GraphQL and REST, so they are not like creating their own. So all of the APIs are on top of this too. So it's a good or bad based on how your information and data looks like. So it's not really about the API, and that's what I'd like to explain. Like it's actually the one before what I present today in the API, the one for the primary key and foreign key for any database. So the example you mentioned, Brent, is actually the perfect example. And finance, banking, they are doing that all the time. So you got the employee information in one database, and you got the ERP information in another database. And to get both of them connected together, there is always like a primary key between them, which is probably would be the employee number or employee ID number. The employee information include like date of birth, address, name, some of their personal information, and it's not wrong, this source of truth for this employee information. And the ERP information, all of the finance information associated with this employees, they are sitting in another platform. HR information sitting maybe in the same or another one, but they are all connected through different primary key and foreign keys. Each one of them is a source of truth for the related information to it. If you want to update that personal information for the employee, you're not updating that in the ERP system. You're updating that in the other system and pushing that from here there. But the key here that you identify what would be the primary keys connecting all of them together, and that would be like fixed one. And you got different data sources all connected. Each one of them is source of truth for all of their information, and all of them forming this employee profile or this bank customer profile. If you don't have that and you're not connected, your API won't work. So you won't find like what's the glue? What do you want me to find? Like, how can I connect this together? So the API will be good or bad based on how your database is being structured and organized. Updating or changing the information, yeah, definitely. You won't change the finance information and the HR platform or the employee personal information and try to push that from here to there. Shouldn't be allowed even in the database by itself. Eventually, like what you got, you'll get like all of them. Forming a profile could be like the example you mentioned, Brent, like for employee and ERP systems, could be for any object in your model, could be for any other thing. Same concept applied for all of them. And when you are trying to track the employee, because that will come to the question, like when the people say single source of truth, and you say we don't have single source of truth, we have too many, they will confuse. Okay, so if I need the employee information, where should I get it from? So, and you won't be able to tell them, okay, because that will be the question from any project manager. I need to get single source of truth for the project quantity. I got too many quantities, they are all different. Which one is the correct one? So to go back to the same point, okay, this employee information, the financial information, they are sitting here. So the correct one is coming from here. So if you got any different quantities, you got one source for the quantities where it's coming from. Yep.
Yeah,
but we might eventually need one place to pull all of this information from. So you'd say, yes, I got different sources of truth, but for the end user, you need to get like one interface place. Okay, that's the user interface. Doesn't matter how many sources connect to it. It might be like a Power BI dashboard or any business intelligence. So when they need any information, they'll go to the dashboard and pull the information from there. It doesn't matter how many databases connected to this one. They are all source of truth for this kind of information.
Yeah.
But
you've made me think of a question as well there, if I can, Mo. Because what you just described there is pretty much, it's like a data warehouse, isn't it? Where you're pulling all the core data from various different tools. It's being governed, cleansed, and what have you, and then your intelligence comes off that. But yeah, I mean, and we're on that path. But what do you guys think in terms of, because the logic's right there, but where you can integrate directly between two tools, and that's working, and how you're managing the data between those two. Does it actually add a bit more complexity, pulling it into another source and then back into the tool that you could directly integrate? You're almost doing that, and like the amount of cleansing that will have to go on in that data warehouse between all of these different sources of data is, I can't even visualize how much effort that will take.
Well, one of our software developers, they went through a refactoring effort with our weekly scheduler because it was using direct APIs to the ERP. But with the ERP, and I can't even explain, but every hour there'd be like a quirk that lasts for about, I don't know, a minute or two where the API wouldn't be received. So therefore it actually pulled down the app and the app couldn't function. So when it happened in the middle of scheduling meetings and stuff, you go and hit the app and there's just nothing showing. And we just tell them, hold on, refresh. Eventually it all shows up. So he said, okay, that's because we're direct hooking out. So his thing is that instead of the app hooking to the ERP and whatever other source, bring it all together to a warehouse concept, sitting in our server, it goes out. And when the connection breaks for that moment, the data on the server, so it might be out of date for minutes. You'll never know interacting with the app. You'll never have disruption of service, and it'll all just resync when those hooks repair. So it's a valid problem. I love to think everything's on, it'll all be good, you connect to it. But I've seen as powerful as these connections are, it's so frustrating. Like my Power BI, I have a ton of Power BI reports that refresh overnight, hooking into directly to the ERP. So I wake up in the morning and I see refresh errors, and it's like, oh crap, I've got a heavy day ahead of me. I get in, no, it's all good. It was just at 1 a.m, it just couldn't connect at that moment. It was trying to update. So
I wanna actually go in here because despite my bias, that's why I hate moderating these types of things. I kind of disagree with some of what was said, or it's not I disagree. It's I think all the industry and everyone is used to is this idea of a data warehouse and visualization. We very deliberately built something that is editable. And that is equally important because it's not just about me seeing a dashboard with, so for example, Mysara had an example of quantities in the models, and the concept of RFIs also came up earlier, right? Some of our clients, what they're doing is they'll take the RFIs, for instance, and they'll take that into a Morta table, which they'll then associate with a P6 activity. That is something that requires human input. And when we're thinking of aggregating data, we're thinking of it as a mechanism to report and to view, but it's equally important for us to be able to use it in all of the different places and use the foreign keys and the primary keys in the way that you said. So I'm personally, but obviously, I personally think editing in these concepts becomes just as important. Now, obviously, you can load it into an app from the data warehouse and so on and so forth, but it's equally important to just not think of it as it's a report.
No, yeah.
We need to make the data consumable by all of the different teams, and we need to make that editable, editable in various ways. The same goes for the quantities when it comes to benchmarks, cost, carbon, resources. All of these things need to be editable in order for us to be able to get to the decisions and the analysis that we need. Yeah, Brent, if you want to go in, and then we'll.
Yeah, just a comment there. When you say something has to be edited, my counter to that would be, what's the sort that, like, you're creating a data source. So even when I look at all those trackers that people are making, they're only making it because there's 1 or 2 columns that that's actually a source. So then, like, you know, you have a warehouse, you have a single source, you pull everything in, you're authoring something, and you've just created a new data source. How does what you've just authored go back into the ecosystem without duplicating everything you needed to author, if that makes
100%.
sense?
It's just the assumption, the problem with construction at the end of the day is there are many data sets that are massively interlinked with each other, which is why you end up needing to develop your own app to take on Excel. None of the point solutions are actually really thinking of these interface areas, which is why people end up having to resort back to Excel or having to look at these these approaches that work for areas of interface. And yeah, we can have a whole long discussion about all of this if we wanted to, but I'm just conscious of time. I wanted, I guess, to thank you all, but I wanted to just ask you like parting thoughts effectively, like if you had one tip to the people who are listening when it comes to getting on the journey with interacting with data, what should they do? Maybe let's start with Mohammed Fawzi.
Okay, maybe I don't know if I missed that part or not, but I believe also there was some of the QA during the presentations. One of them was is it mandatory that a BIM manager to have a project management degree? So maybe this will be my tip, that if you cannot have a project management degree as official as a study, he should have the skill at least. So some people have the skill by nature for being organized, for being knowing how to make management and how to make control, how to make quality check, how to make planning, and so on. So whatever you are, a project manager or a BIM manager, but you should have that skill. So maybe this will be my tip to answer that question. That yeah, you have to get the skill even by having it as a degree, as an educational degree, or by yourself, by nature.
Awesome. Love that. Let's focus on skills. Shout out to the community here. There is a lot of training effectively that happens on a lot of CPDs that exist within the BIM community, within the BIM Heroes community, to help people upskill as well. And I know that's something that like Ralph is really passionate about, and the team is really passionate about. Mysar, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, say like upscaling and ongoing training. It's not only like one-off training or one-off learning. It will be like ongoing upskilling. So things are moving very fast, changing very fast, very quick. So ongoing learning will be one of the very helpful advice, let's say.
Awesome. Brent, I've ended up going in alphabetical order. Well, reverse alphabetical order.
Sorting A to Z, Z to A.
So mine would be, don't be afraid of your data, embrace your data. So, but look at all the work you do and understand that you're working with information, and just envision how it all comes together. Imagine, right? That's all.
Awesome. Mandy?
Yeah, I guess that everyone on the call, we're all trying to affect change in whatever jobs, roles we do. So, I mean, if I could give myself advice back in my earlier career, it'd be like, you're going to face a hell of a lot of disappointment. So, you know, you got to have resilience, pick yourself up. You're gonna have 20 losses before you get a win, whether it's buying into something So just keep picking yourself back up, and then when you get those small wins, celebrate them.
Yeah, I love that specifically because you also talked about the risk register that failed to land a few times. I want to understand what happened there. But yeah, clear. Like I think in digital and in change, like that's super important. Thank you all. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I think if I had one, it would be share and learn from each other. And I think the speakers have been a great example of sharing the knowledge that they have and just being very open and transparent and collaborating with each other and engaging with each other. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for making it a great first half for the day.